Very good. So it is 2 minutes past the 3rd hour. The time for the sutta class to begin. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ dhammāṃ saṅghāṃ namasami. So I'm going on with the sutta class which I did last time. We only got halfway through it. That was from the Nidana Samyutta. This is part of the Samyutta Nikaya, doing the teachings on dependent origination and also dependent cessation. And the Nidana is a Pali word meaning for cause, or the origin of things. So that's why it's called Nidana. And mostly it's about the origination. And as we did last time, I went through the teaching of origination and the definition of all the terms to show what these actually mean. And I think also I did do the cessation one as well, didn't I? Yes. Did I, Lynn, or? Yeah, that's what I thought too, yeah. So the dependent origination was where the Buddha particularly wanted to find out the cause of suffering. And I'll just go on this in brief. And saw that the main cause of suffering is actually being born. Once you are born in any realm of existence, there is always going to be an unpleasantness, a suffering. And it's not just not getting what you want, it's the fact of wanting anything. I think it was a saying from Oscar Wilde, there are only 2 tragedies in life. The first is not getting what you want, and the second tragedy is getting what you want, which is always a disappointment. And that was actually a wonderful observation. So all wanting creates unhappiness and suffering. And because of that, the life without wanting, without doing, ceases, as we will soon find out. And so the wanting is suffering. And when you're born, you have to have wanting, otherwise you'll just die, you'll cease right there. So from birth is what causes birth? Where did we come from? And this is where the dependent origination is saying that we were born because of past life, which is where we have next. We have this whole process of from craving, from wanting things, that giving rise to this fuel, this upadana, which gives rise to this creation of realms of existence, the bhava, and from that we get birth. It's basically the craving, the wanting, and that creates a fuel where existence can be created, and there we go into our new realm. And I've also mentioned a very important point, that most of the places which people get reborn into, the heaven realms and the hell realms, are very much our own creations. I mention this because it's not said specifically in the sutras, but it's implied when they all say that these are mind-made realms, where in heaven, if you want to go to a heaven realm, you create it yourself. It is designed to suit what you want or think what you deserve. And the same with the hells. These are created for you, by you, what you think you need to be punished. So there's no one sends you to hell, no one keeps you there. It's actually self-created. It's an important point because it gives you the idea that if you really want to be free of lower realms, even free of heaven, stop creating things, stop wanting. And this whole process of craving, giving rise to the fuel of existence, which gives rise to the creation of these realms, which gives rise to rebirth, is stopped. And then it was just mentioning that, to have craving, you have to have sensory experience. And there we have the factors of consciousness and the objects of consciousness, nama-rupa, together with contact, the six senses, contact and feeling. These are all things which occur together. Where there's consciousness, there has to be an object of consciousness. You can't say one causes the other. It's just without one, the other one cannot exist. In other words, the simile of the Buddha was two things leaning against each other. He said these were sheaves of reeds or grass, leaning against each other. If you take one away, the other one must fall. And that's with consciousness and the objects of consciousness. And within the objects of consciousness, now we have inseparably things like the contact, six senses, and feeling. So these are all happen all in one moment. They're together. Without one, you can't have the other. And that is an important point, because sometimes people think we can be conscious without any feeling. Some cosmic consciousness where we can just be. No happiness, no suffering, just be. But that cannot happen. This particular sutta here will actually inform you that if you're conscious, you have to have happiness and suffering. You have to have both of them. You have to have vedana. You have to have perception. You have to have an object of consciousness. You can't just be conscious of nothing. There has to be an object, otherwise consciousness turns off. And if they say, where does the consciousness come from? And this conscious process, and they said it's from the sankharas of the previous life, the karma formations. And here again, karma is will. Anything which is intended is karma. So if you do things by accident, you had no intention of doing that. That was not your aim, not your goal. You weren't willing it to happen. Then it's not karmic. If it's a willed intention, that you say pick up a gun, you're just playing with it, and you happen to shoot your wife. That was just an accident. But if you do it on purpose, that's intention, that's karma. So it's the intention is important to be karma. Chedanam karmang vadami, said the Buddha, that Chedana is karma. And that's the sankharas, the actions and doings which create consciousness in your future life. And I also pointed out last week the very close connection between doing things, intending things, and being. And that has been observed by many philosophers, and that's where I made that old joke last week of on the wall. I mentioned this to someone had a lunch last Thursday in Hong Kong with a guy who also went to Cambridge. And I was telling about the graffiti on the walls of Cambridge in my day were very, very good. And on the outside of the philosophy department was the graffiti, to do is to be, which was Descartes, many Descartes. To be is to do, which was Jean-Paul Sartre. He changed it around. Descartes was very early. Jean-Paul Sartre was early last century. And it was summed up by the United States philosopher, very famous, doobie-doobie-doo, Frank Sinatra, which is a nice little joke, which I've told many times here, but it's a good one. And it was actually on the wall of Cambridge University Philosophy Department. Some student had done it with some crayon or something. But it did actually show the connection between doing and being with sankharas and consciousness. Sankharas being the karmic formations and the consciousness, especially in your future life. And while we do that, karma is based on delusion. So that was the whole series, from delusion to karma formations, to a consciousness in your next life. And with the consciousness, you have to have objects of consciousness with that 6 sense bases, or some sense basis at least. And with that, you have contact and feeling. And sometimes from that, you have the craving, the wanting. In fact, you always have to have the wanting. And once you have that wanting, then there is the fuel for another life. And the bhava, the creation of that new life, and the birth into that life, and the consequent suffering of which we all have. So this was the Buddha's understanding of the nature of suffering, its cause. Without a soul, it's just this whole process of suffering. And then we had cessation, which was more important, where the Buddha was saying, well, delusion is gone. then we don't have any of these karma formations. It's not me or mine, I'm not doing anything anymore. Which means there's no rebirth. When it's not a me doing things, when being is seen through, then there cannot be really a doing. So there cannot be a rebirth. So with the end of the illusion of being, there's the end of doing, the sankharas, which will be the end of a future consciousness in a new life. And obviously with the end of consciousness in a new life, there'll be no objects of consciousness, no sense bases, no contact, no feeling. And with that, there can never be any more craving, there can never be any more fuel or process of rebirth, or birth, or consequent suffering. So there's a beautiful description there. Especially I've focused on this time on the connection between being and doing. And I mention that because it also ties up with a type of meditation I teach here, which is not doing anything, letting go of controlling. And you will see, if you practice that way of meditation, when you let go of controlling, you don't do things, your idea of existence, the essence of your being is being challenged and eroded. The idea of self is being eroded when you let go, when you don't do anything. The more you do, the more of a control freak you are, the more solid becomes your sense of self. When you let go, this sense of self starts to vanish. That's why letting go is both difficult and scary, because your idea of yourself is vanishing. So that comes in as part of dependent origination. Now we go on to this nutriment. So if you can see that in your text there. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove on Nata Pindika's Park, because there are these four kinds of nutriment for the maintenance of beings that have already come to be, and for the assistance of those about to come to be. Really nice little saying there. This is saying that there's beings here already born, and there is those in the queue waiting to be born. It's a beautiful little saying there, just specifically saying about rebirth. If there is rebirth, there has to be people who are going to come into birth. This is what keeps them going. What are these four kinds of nutriments? There's a nutriment of edible food, gross or subtle. And by gross or subtle, it doesn't mean like McDonald's or bean sprouts. It means just the gross food, anything which you stick down your mouth, and more subtle foods, such as there's a certain type of heavenly being who feed on happiness. That's what keeps them going, just joy. And you can actually see that even human beings, that sometimes you don't need to eat so much if you've got so much happiness in this world. So that's the first type of nutriment, which is the obvious one. The second type is contact. This is sensory experience, sensory contact. And the third is volition. You are because you want to be. And the fourth is consciousness itself. These are the four kinds of nutriments for the maintenance of beings that have already come to be and for the assistance of those who are about to come to be. And there are so many good reflections on that. These are the four nutriments of a being. It's not just food. You don't just live on food. As they say, Shakespeare, man does not live on bread alone. Or if it's Chinese, not on dim sum alone. Or whatever. Just come back from Hong Kong. So what it really means, that's an easy one. But when it's contact, if a person just has no sensory input, if they are deaf, and if they are blind, it's very hard for the being to survive, simply because there's no contact to them. Or a more modern case, or a more usual case, if you go and see a loved one who's in a coma in hospital, and even though they can't speak to you, many people in the coma are still alive. They can hear and feel what you are saying. If they weren't stimulated with sound, with touch, or with even sight, that they would die, they would give up. Because you can understand the stimulation of the senses, contact, is a necessary part of food for beings to exist. If you do stick a person in a sensory deprivation chamber for too long, they will die. There's nothing to stimulate them. I know that some people, I remember, who have been put in these dungeons for years, sometimes they have a rich mental life, a fantasy life, remembering whole novels or even whole symphonies. And that has kept them going, their contact with the mental world. But without some sensory stimulation, a person must die. Which is one of the reasons, if a person is in a coma and you want to sort of get them out again, you have to stimulate them, talk to them, touch them. Whatever it is which stimulates the senses and gets the consciousness going again. Because that is actually feeding the mind food, nutriment, if someone's in a coma. And after contact, there is mental volition, literally the will to live. And I think you've all known people who sometimes have just given up. They've given up the will to live and they die very quickly. Sometimes their partner, I don't know how many times I've seen this, it's weird. Their partner for many years passes away. And they're perfectly healthy before, but they just lose the will to live and they die a few weeks afterwards. People have been married for such a long time. And you can see the reason why the volition, the will to keep going, is so important. It is one of the foods. And also like consciousness, or what you should really put here, consciousness is. To being aware, having a conscious which is there, not just, this obviously goes with the contact with the objects of consciousness. That is literally a food. One conscious moment is the fuel for more conscious moments. So these are what the Buddha said are the four foods, what keeps things going. They have these four kinds of nutriments for the maintenance of beings that have already come to be and for the assistance of those about to come to be. Amongst these four kinds of nutriment have what is their source, what is their origin, from where are they born and produced. Those four kinds of nutriment have craving as their source, craving as their origin. They are born and produced from craving. So even craving is the big enemy number one again. So that craving produces the nutriment which keeps people going. Take away that craving and just you give up the need for food. You give up the contact. Sometimes people cut themselves off in apartments and literally wither away. No sensory impingement. And there's no sort of will to live. And even they're conscious, sleeping all day, or just dulling out in drugs, the consciousness loses its force. So literally they're having no food to keep their life force going. And it's craving, wanting them, is the cause of those things happening. And then it goes, what is craving as its source, as its origin? And then we come to the ordinary part of dependent origination. Craving has feeling, and feeling has contact. Contact has six sense bases. Six sense bases have this objects of consciousness, the name and form. Name and form has consciousness. Consciousness has the volitional formations as its source, and volitional formations has ignorance or delusion as a source. Thus, monks with delusion as condition, volitional formations come to be. Volitional formation causes new consciousness, and so on. Such is this whole mass of suffering. But with the remainless fading away, cessation of delusion, comes cessation of volitional formations, and so on. And with the cessation of all these things comes a cessation of these nutriments, which means that the being ceases to exist. Thus the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. So that was a nice psychological insight of the Buddha, to see that human beings, what keeps them going for the maintenance of beings in this life and support of beings who are about to come to be. These 4 nutriments or foods. Not just physical food, but just contact, experience, the craving, the will, and just consciousness itself being the food for the next consciousness. Any questions or comments about that? Okay, Cheng.
Can I just on this sutta? Can we read it as also? It's just not talking about. It's not just talking about a human, a 5 sense world. We can also stretch it to
animals,
power,
hell realms. Yes, indeed.
Because I see the focus should be on this one instead of people focusing on the dependent origination. Because if you're doing jhana or doing stillness, you got the experience, and you start to gather experience and you start to gather insight. It's only through this application of this.
Well, if
understanding how craving, what is the nature of craving, what is the nature of feelings.
Correct, yeah.
And then, I mean,
you can understand just how in a jhana you're almost disappearing because you've cut off so much food for this being. You've cut off, the much of the contact. You're so deep inside yourself. You can't hear, you can't see, smell, taste, or touch. So much of the contact, that second nutriment, is cut off. Volition is totally cut off. There's no will left. And consciousness is so refined and subtle. There's hardly much there at all. So, and this subtle food is just the joy from those states which keeps one going. So you can see in this jhanas, there's still some food there, but it's so subtle because you're in a very subtle place. So you can see the different types of food which can keep people going. But I'm more interested in just some of the lower realms of existence, say a hell realm. Why do people stay in a hell realm? What maintains them? Sometimes you say, what do they eat in the hell realm? And it's not just like eating things. Food, coarse or subtle, is only one of the things which keep people there. It's the contact, the harsh sensory experience. It's the food which keeps people there. Mostly it's the volition which keeps people in their hell realm. They will themselves to be there simply because they deserve. They think they deserve to be punished. They have ill will towards themselves. Never underestimate that force even in this world, let alone other worlds. And obviously just the consciousness, at least, even if it's a very painful consciousness, it's still, they're alive, they're aware. You can only understand that sometimes I've seen people who are suffering a lot in hospital towards the end of their life, but they cannot let go. They'd rather be conscious and suffer than let go and fear not being alive at all. So that consciousness does become a food for them. So sometimes you ask, why does a person stay in hell? Why do people stay in bad states in this world? The addicts, the people who may be stuck in some drug-induced stupor. Why do they continue? What maintains them in that state? Well, but the conditioning from craving and born of ignorance, but sometimes these 4 nutriments, they give psychologists a different way of looking at why people stay. What is the food which keeps a person in an addiction? And sometimes you can use this Buddha's insight as a new way of treating some addictions, especially the contact. The sensory experience which they need. And that's what keeps them in the addiction. The experience of the drug or the high, whatever it is. And obviously the will, the volition. And just that type of consciousness feeds on itself, sustains itself. They'd rather be there. and conscious of that than anything else. This is what feeds a state of being. Do you want to take the...
The Buddha set up a paradox here, hasn't he? Because he's got being on one side, which is just being, and then we've got dependent origination. So when a dependent origination occurs, for the you need to have those four factors.
Yeah.
So he's accommodating like both views.
I think what he's accommodating is that this is a cause and effect process, and so the fuels are produced, but they're also the cause, of more being. Being produces the fuel, and the fuel produces more being. And it's like a cycle of cause and effect, called the existence. So it's not so much a paradox, it's just seeing a whole process and describing existence not as some entity which is fixed, which you can make a snapshot of and say, this is me, this is who I am. There's no such idea of who I am. You are a process, always in flux. You're a flow, not a static thing. So all photographs are still photographs, are very unreal, because a being can't exist without moving. If they did stop moving, they vanish. So it is a photograph, is not reality. It takes away the movement of life. So a process is much closer to reality because it makes the movement, the flow, an integral part of the description. You can't take a snapshot of reality because that misses where it came from or where it's going. It takes away too much information.
Ajahn, you mentioned that heaven and hell are created by the being. I create my heaven or the hell. And yes, so far that's fine, but what about the yama? Isn't yama an independent entity there who judges?
This was in some parts of Buddhism, but it's not in core teachings of the Buddha. In fact, I'm not really sure how much that is in the teachings of the Buddha in the suttas and how much it's in the commentaries. Yeah, it is, but it's not core. It's not taught about once or twice, but not sort of core teachings. So whether this being the Buddha is referring to an explanation of things as they were, very often you'd hear suttas or descriptions of, say, the Tusita heaven and Sakka in the Tawatingsa heaven, even the Brahmaloka. There's many talks about that, but the Yama Devas very, very rarely described at all in the suttas. And to me, the whole idea in traditional commentarial Buddhism of a heavenly being judging people makes no sense to me. A heavenly being will always be something which is wise and compassionate. Be a loving being. What loving being would ever send anybody to hell? Now, we're human beings. You're not a deva, but could you send a person to be tortured for 1,000 years? There's no way you could do that. So how could a heavenly being do that? And that's what I was asked to believe. It's one of the reasons why I couldn't accept a God. How could a God, an all-loving, powerful God, do bad things to people?
I thought that was the occasion when the Buddhists said, without even any question from the disciples, about how hellish is the hell realms and how Yama himself lamented, when is the Tathagata going to come and save everybody?
Yeah, well, no, I don't think that's actually sure. It's in the Majjhima Nikaya. I think that may be in the Mahayana Suttas.
Is there?
Is it? Which one is that in?
It was taught by
Ajahn Brahmali or something? Ajahn Sujata.
Ajahn
Sujata.
Chitamalo.
I cannot remember that one. But
It's quite a terrible description of the hell.
Yeah, whether that's part of the original teaching of the Buddha doesn't really doesn't fit in with everything else which you hear about the Buddha. But I can't see anybody doing that judging. I can certainly see people judging themselves. So that's what I understand what happens.
If that's how we should look at it, then what about the other one whereby if we don't answer a reasonable question from the Blessed One, we'll be split on the head by the sucker. And he was there ready.
And that's never happened. I think that was one of those idioms which people actually say. When you say, you stupid man, asking a question like that, go and drop dead. But one never does drop dead, and there's many other curses, in Chinese as well. So many of those curses. What was it? May you go and get eaten by. Oh, that's by. No, was it? I know, just in Hong Kong last week, they said, "Don't go out; you might get eaten by a ghost or something." Just a few days ago, someone said one of the things which they always were scared of. And their parents told them, don't get out, otherwise you'll get eaten by a ghost or eaten by something or other. So because of that, you can see that there are many idiomatic, culturally bound little sayings. If you don't answer the question, someone's going to split your head open with a sword. But I never saw that happen once. And I can't see the Buddha threatening someone like that. Is it whatever I threaten you, look, look, if you don't shut up, Sakura's going to split your head open. Look, I'd never say things like that except as a joke, because does that really fit with who the Buddha was? Exactly, the Sakura would break his precept, killing somebody. And would the Buddha actually allow that? If Sakura started taking that seriously, he'd say, stop, leave the guy alone. So there's a few things like that are just added from the culture of the time. Just say, sorry? Oh, yeah, sometimes there's some very foolish people who believe these things could happen and just start to sort of sweat. Anyway, where we get to? Yeah?
I went to an outdoor concert last night, and there was a man in a wheelchair. And
you went to an outdoor concert, there was a man in a wheelchair.
And everybody was throwing arms up the street during the concert. And he was just
Could you see?
absolutely still.
Microphone.
His head didn't move at all, he didn't speak, no emotion seemed to come out of him. Does that mean he'll get a very good rebirth because he hasn't got all this blinking that we or does it depend on the past karma?
I don't know, it depends what he was thinking at the time. Maybe he hadn't turned on his hearing aid, I'm not quite sure why. But he may have not turned on his hearing aid, which may be the same with you.
I would say it's a bit more than that.
Well, then that.
It's interesting because I observed that last night. I said, isn't that man there? He hasn't moved at all.
Yeah.
He was disabled. There's something wrong.
Yeah, we're just wondering whether he was enjoying it or not, or whether he didn't like it, or whether he was just not paying attention, or what he was doing. Well, it could have been just restraint, I'm not sure.
Well, supposing a person wasn't sort of receiving them.
Yes,
And, in a wheelchair, not receiving all this.
yes, yeah.
So therefore, all this is cut off, isn't it?
It is cut off, yes, but sometimes people who they don't react in the outer world are living in their inner world, and they can create all sorts of fantasies and dreams in their inner world. In the same way, your good husband may be watching a great movie, and he's totally cut off from you. You say, darling, the dinner's ready. He just can't hear you, he's totally cut off. Just like that man in the wheelchair was cut off from the music. So sometimes people can get absorbed in fantasies and stuff. They just can't hear. So I'm not quite sure whether what was going on with that man in a wheelchair. Could be many things. Okay. On here, when I chose a few of these suttas, I continued on with, from nutriment, this little sutta from Molya Paguna, and this starts to use nutriment and dependent origination to overcome the sense of a me or a mine, a self. At Savatthi, monks are these 4 kinds of nutriment for the maintenance of beings that have already come to be, and for the assistance of those about to come to be. What for? The nutriment of edible food, gross or subtle. 2nd, contact. 3rd, mental volition. 4th, consciousness. These are the 4 kinds of nutriment for the maintenance of beings that have already come to be, and for the assistance of those about to come to be, as said in the previous sutra. When this was said, the Venerable Molya Paguna said to the Blessed One, "Venerable Sir, who consumes the nutriment consciousness?" "Not a valid question," the Blessed One replied. "I do not say one consumes. If I should say one consumes, in that case, yours would be a valid question, Venerable Sir, who consumes. But I do not speak thus. Since I do not speak thus, if one should ask me, Venerable Sir, for what is the nutriment consciousness a condition? In other words, what does it cause? Like a food causes something, a nutriment is a fuel for something. So it's not some being eats it, it's what does this cause? So for what is a nutriment consciousness a cause or a condition? That would be a valid question. To this, a valid answer is this: the nutriment consciousness is a condition for the production of future renewed existence, otherwise known as rebirth or reincarnation. So the consciousness is a food for your next life. When that which has come into being exists, the 6 senses come to be, with the 6 sense spaces as a condition, contact. Venerable Sir, who makes contact? Not a valid question, the Blessed One replied. I did not say one makes contact. If I did say one makes contact, in that case that would be a valid question, Venerable Sir, who makes contact. But I did not speak thus. Since I do not speak thus, if you should ask me instead, Venerable Sir, with what as a condition does contact come to be, in other words, what causes contact, that would be a valid question. To this, the valid answer is, with the 6 sense spaces as a condition, contact comes to be. With contact as a condition, feeling. Venerable Sir, who feels? He interrupts again. Not a valid question, the Blessed One replied. I did not say one feels. I said with contact as a condition, feeling. So he never says with contact as a condition one feels, or with feeling as a condition, one craves. He said no, with feeling as a condition, craving. With craving as a condition, there's fuel. With fuel as a condition, existence. Not the one exists. So, Venerable Sir, who feels? Not a valid question, the Blessed One replied. I do not say one feels. If I should say one feels, in that case, that would be a valid question. Venerable Sir, who feels? But I did not speak thus. Since I do not speak thus, if one should ask me, Venerable Sir, with what as a condition does feeling come to be? In other words, what causes feeling? That would be a valid question. Oh no, sorry. Venerable Sir, with a condition, with what as a condition does feeling come to be? Actually, it's the other way around. That's a bad translation there. It should be, Venerable Sir, with feeling as a condition, what comes to be? This would be a valid question. Should this, the valid answer is with contact as a condition. Oh no, sorry. They did get it right. I was misreading it. Venerable Sir, who feels? But I do not speak thus. Since I do not speak thus, if one should ask me, Venerable Sir, what causes feeling? With what as a condition does feeling come to be? That would be a valid question. To this, the valid answer is with contact as a condition, feeling comes to be. Contact causes feeling. With feeling as a condition, craving. Venerable Sir, who craves? Not a valid question, the Blessed One replied. I did not say one craves. I said, with feeling as a condition, craving. If I should say one craves, in that case that would be a valid question, Venerable Sir, who craves? But I did not speak that. Since I did not speak that, if one should ask me, Venerable Sir, with what as a condition does craving come to be, that would be a valid question. To this a valid answer, with feeling as the cause, craving comes to be. With craving as a condition, clinging as a condition existence, such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. But Paguna, with the remainders fading away in cessation of the 6 bases of contact, comes cessation of contact. With the cessation of contact, cessation of feeling, cessation of craving, cessation of fuel, cessation of existence, cessation of birth, cessation of aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. But who ceases? I did not say that. Not a valid question. I do not say one ceases. If I should say one ceases, in that case that would be a valid question. Venerable Sir, who ceases? But I did not speak thus. Since I did not speak thus, if one should ask me, Venerable Sir, with what as a condition does ceasing come to be? That would be a valid question. That's not in there. I'm adding that because that's an interesting ending to that sutta. Because some people ask in cessation, but who ceases? Who ends? What's the answer? Not a valid question. So I like that little sutta there because that's so common when people say, well, who feels? Who knows? Who ceases? It's not self. When you understand not self, you understand this is a process. And the Buddha never said that someone contacts, someone feels, someone craves. He says craving, not someone who craves. Feeling, not someone who feels. Consciousness, not someone who is conscious. Volition, but not someone who wills. And this little sutta here points it out very neatly. And I wish the Buddha had actually said that at the end. He said, well, who ceases? Not a valid question. Because that's something which I'm asked all the time.
So, can I understand this as what causing me to put effort in practice?
What causes you put in effort in the practice is the illusion of a self. That's why I keep saying effort in the practice goes in the wrong direction.
So what is this right effort?
It's the right effort to stop. It's the effort to put on the brakes. The effort to renounce, to let go, to be kind, to be gentle.
But what about putting in the hours to sit and focus?
Again, even putting in hours. Remember Ajahn Chah, he would call that chicken meditation. Chicken. Because he used to say, if it's putting in the hours, if that's really important, then the chickens in the world who sit on the eggs much longer than any monk sits on a cushion, they should be all enlightened by now. So he said, it's not about time. So it's more about the quality of being able to let go and be. So not doing things. Because you can see striving and doing is making more of these sankharas, karma formations, is creating more being. It's not lessening it. That's one of the obvious, that's why I point to this type of sutta. Too many people strive, put enormous effort, and they get frustrated and angry. I told this in Hong Kong to Mahayana monks over breakfast. Haven't you noticed that all of those Zen masters and Mahayana masters in mainland China, the ones who are very strict and very fierce, the ones who put forth a lot of effort, they're also very angry. And they'll say, yes, yes. And there's a reason for that. It's because the more you put forth effort, the more you're controlling. You control yourself, you control others. The more you let go, the less you control, the more kind you are to yourself and others. Compassion and control are two ends of a spectrum. One leads to more being, a greater sense of existence, and the other one leads to existence fading away. When you don't do anything, being vanishes. To do is to be. This is the great thing, is you sit because you've got nothing else to do. It's like the screensaver on the computer. When nothing else has happened, that's what occurs. And when the screensaver is there after a while, the computer turns off, goes to sleep. Nothing's happening. So your five senses, first of all, they turn off. In your five sense world, the breath is a screensaver. When everything else vanishes, that's the only thing moving, it's just the breath. So your screensaver is the breath, and when that turns off, you got things like nimittas. That's why in some of these screensavers, there's these incredible, beautiful images on the screen. When it's about to turn off. Let's just have that on our computer. And well, that's like nimittas. The things that turn off. This is the only last thing left, and soon that disappears, and everything gets perfectly still. So this is, you don't get these screensavers by doing something. It's when the computer stops, when you stop clicking the mouse. So right effort is keeping your hand off the mouse.
This is good, but there's some problem here.
Very good.
I thought that I need to get up when the time is up, to get up,
Yeah.
straight away and sit.
Yeah, but what happens is, after a while it's not your choice. I don't get up, I don't go down. And I'm not trying to be clever. It's just, you've got nothing else to do. So you stop, and you're still. It's the ground state, doing nothing.
Surely there's some balance here.
Oh yeah, if you come out, there's something to do. Out of compassion for others, your duties. But this is the ground state, the background state. When there's nothing to do nothing. It's a beautiful saying. Too often when there's nothing to do, we find things to do. What are you doing that for? It's really crazy. Our whole culture is built on doing. It's a crazy culture. We do so much. How about learning how to do nothing? The hardest thing you'll ever do in your life is sit down and do absolutely nothing. Not even think about doing nothing.
But I must admit, sometimes I'm struggling to sleep more and to get up and sit.
Sleeping is doing something. But just sitting there, totally free of any will to do. It's very hard. Even in sleep you're doing something, dreaming, willing this, worrying about that. To do is to be. And when you don't do anything, where's your being gone? That's why I think Nietzsche said that God is dead. I think one of the reasons was because he wasn't doing anything. Started off the universe but wasn't interfering enough, so he wasn't doing anything. He becomes irrelevant. Even God, to have relevance, has to every now and again interfere with the world, do a miracle. Otherwise, he's not doing anything. Therefore, it doesn't exist. To do is to be. So when you stop doing things, or the least you do, the more you disappear. Yes, go on, Cheng. Yep. Remainless fading away and cessation of the 6% spaces of contact.
Because I think it's where is an important cessation point. You see, we are used to reading just forward origination, and then we just skip and then think that cessation must come home.
Yeah, cessation is the best. I agree with you there. That's why, yeah, I totally agree. Everyone talks about dependent origination, but the juicy part is dependent cessation.
Because this part is very important.
Exactly.
Six base of contact is very important. Because we are human, we got a 6 sense base, and that's where the link is. Then we can do nothing, no jhana.
Yeah, and then get enlightened.
So, but then it's been skipped in all the dependent.
Yeah, but and you got a good point here, because at this they usually say remainderless fading away and cessation of delusion, and they skip that on all the other sense base, on all the other factors of the.
This is where we start. This is our starting point. We are always deluded. We will be deluded.
Exactly, but I'm deluding you.
This is the starting point that
Yeah.
if you want to read and want to understand something. I mean, when I read Dhamma,
Yeah.
I read to stimulate my.
Good.
So this should be the focus of our attention.
Good, yeah. But one of the points which you've focused my mind on is that here, I think one of the only places, it uses remainderless fading away and cessation, not just of delusion, but of the 6 sense spaces. In other words, remainderless, nothing left. Fading away of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and knowing. The mind. Remainderless fading away and cessation of the mind. So that's a powerful thing, because in Zen Buddhism, they think the mind is the ground state. You go back to the mind. In Mahayana as well. Not the cessation of the mind, but everything else ceasing and going to some sort of cosmic mind state. Here it says specifically, clearly, the remainderless fading away in cessation of not just seeing, hearing, smelling and touching, but the remainderless fading away in cessation of knowing. Wow. Yes?
That's why I'm saying this remainders. There's no argument. There's only sabe on the
That's right.
arupa jhana, all the description. It's what we are going for, and I don't understand people who understand English and they are going round and round saying that it's still
Something
what
like
what consciousness.
it's the Amattajita, the original consciousness.
Remainders is remainders, nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
All clear away.
I agree with you, but the problem is, as you know, Cheng, that many people don't read the suttas. They stay with the teachers they have. That's again talking with the Zen monks in Korea and the Mahayana monks from mainland China. Now, the problem is that people aren't allowed to ask questions. Whatever their teacher says, they take as like the word of a Buddha. Now, this is why I praise and admire you, Cheng, because you ask questions. Well done. Because if yes, very good.
Okay. To be honest with you, I feel like I'm in street.
Yeah.
Friends
Yeah.
or circle. They talk about this, as you said,
Yes, yeah.
face consciousness.
Correct. You say Mahayana, this is for because you haven't got the microphone there. Many Mahayanas say going back to the big base consciousness, the ground of all being and that sort of stuff. You need to follow the Sutta Vinaya of the Buddha, yeah. And you see with this, it says remainderless cessation of these things. It's powerful teaching, the Buddha. The experience from remainderless cessation of many things in meditation, and peacefulness and bliss. The more you disappear, and this is the path of the jhanas, the more you disappear, the more you realize there's nothing there. Yes, Chin.
We don't even have to aim for jhana. If you just understand the concept of fading away, when your thinking fade away, you don't
You will.
thinking, you're really going to
You,
breath maybe, and you just not doing.
you're not doing is you don't, and you go to the jhanas as well, you can't help it.
Okay, remainers thinking that is another argument of where you stop, but it's just these two words, if you got it right, it's just...
Yeah, indeed, it's brilliant. The Buddha was, you know that sometimes we chant the virtues of the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha. When we do the Dhamma, we go suwakato bhagavata Dhammo, which means well expounded is the teachings of the Buddha. And what we mean by well expounded, he put it in ways that it's very hard to get around remainderless cessation and fading away. Or remainderless fading away and cessation. That's so beautifully put. You can't have any what they call wiggle room to have a sort of a something left for me. And that's why I like that it is suwakato. It's beautiful. It's really well put in such a way that people can't sort of get wrong teachings in. That's why we do these sutta classes, so people can actually read it. My goodness, and it's here. That's in the Samyutta Nikaya, the 12th Samyutta, Nidanavagga Samyutta, and that was sutta number 12. Okay, let's carry on with a little thing. There's the two ways, and I put this in again because it shows the importance of the cessation. At Savatthi, bhikkhus, I will teach you the wrong way and the right way. You know, sometimes we always want to have the right way of Buddhism and avoid the wrong way of Buddhism. Yes, Venerable Sir, those monks replied, the Blessed One said this, and what bhikkhus is the wrong way? With delusion as condition, volitional formations come to be. With volitional formations and conditions, consciousness, and all the way to the origin of this whole mass of suffering. This bhikkhus is called the wrong way. So, like, dependent origination is the wrong way, creating more rebirth. So what is the right way? With the remainderless fading away and cessation of delusion comes cessation of volitional formation, cessation of volitional formation, cessation of consciousness, cessation of consciousness, the cessation of name and form, cessation of name and form, cessation of the six sense bases, cessation of six sense bases, cessation of contact, cessation of contact, cessation of feeling, cessation of feeling, cessation of craving, cessation of craving, cessation of the fuel, cessation of the fuel, cessation of existence, cessation of existence, cessation of birth, the remainderless fading away and cessation of old age, sickness and death and this whole mass of suffering. I decided those things in there. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. This, monks, is called the right way. Very beautiful. So what is right Buddhism? It's not Mahayana or Theravada or Ajahn Brahm's Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism. I like quoting this. What is the right Buddhism? Right Buddhism is with the remainderless fading away and cessation of delusion, is this fading away of the mental formations. It's a beautiful little say. If you say, well, what is real Buddhism? You can just quote this. Dependent cessation. Very beautiful. Any questions on that? Okay, now we go into a famous sutta, Kachana Gota Sutta. And this, if anyone is a scholar of Buddhism, this started the Majjhimaka of the Mahayana schools. Nagarjuna, who was a famous scholar, looked at this and he realized the way that Mahayana was going at the time was missing a point. They were all arguing about existence or non-existence, the nature of a self, whether there is anything there after the enlightenment of a being die, and when they die, all that sort of argument which goes on today. And he looked at this and realized this is such a powerful and beautiful teaching. And the whole school of Mahayana came from this sutta, Kachana Gota Sutta. And it was called the Middle Way vehicle. So it's a beautiful sutta. At Savatthi, the Venerable Kachana Gota approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said to him, Venerable Sir, it is said right view. Right view. In what way, Venerable Sir, is there right view? This world, Kachana, for the most part depends upon a duality. So remember in Mahayana we get duality teachings. This was the original answer to duality, the real non-duality. Not quite what people think. This world, Kachana, for the most part, depend upon the duality, upon the notion of existence and the notion of non-existence. And the word is like ati and nati. Now to understand what he really means by existence and non-existence, you can actually find out by his argument to say that both are wrong. But for one who sees the origin of the world as it really is with correct wisdom, there is no notion of non-existence in regard to the world. And for one who sees cessation of the world as it reality is with correct wisdom, there's no notion of existence in regard to the world. Now what does it mean by the origin of the world? Remember, this is part of the Nidana Samyutta. Just come on with origin. The origin of the world is with delusion as a condition. We have the volitional formations. With volitional formations we have consciousness. We have consciousness, name and form, and then 6 sense bases, contact, feeling. With feeling as a condition, craving, fuel, existence, birth. With birth as a condition, old age, sickness and death. Such is the origin of the world. So seeing there's an origin of the world, you cannot say there's nothing. And there can be no notion, one who sees the origin of the world, there is no notion of non-existence. For one who sees the cessation of the world, with the cessation of delusion, there's a cessation of all this stuff. Therefore you cannot say there's something exists, because it ceases. Sometimes instead of existence, I found it easier to use the word persistence. Because there's an origin, you can't say there's nothing. Because there's cessation, you can't see that things persist. And any of you who remember your mathematics at high school, it is similar to the mathematical concept of a point. A point exists, but it has no dimension. So because it has no size, in that sense, you think it doesn't exist, but it's there. So it's in between existing and non-existing. In the sense it doesn't have any length. But it's not nothing, it's a point. Now that's just one little simile which I came up with when I was first read this. But you can't say something exists because it ceases. You can't. It doesn't last very long. It just pop and it's gone again. You can't say it doesn't exist because you can experience it. Now this is a fascinating thing because sometimes people argue, yes, I am because I'm here. Something is here. You can't say there's nothing. But then you can't say there's something either because it's always changing. Every moment, I really mean every moment, every microsecond, every 10 to the minus 36 seconds in quantum theory, it's just changing. Total flux. Nothing persists. So it's the total flux, therefore you can say it doesn't persist at all, it doesn't exist. It half comes into existence, but before it is actually born, it dies. It's pregnant, but then it never gets born. So you can't say it exists, you can't say it doesn't exist. It's in between. The world Kachana is for the most part shackled by the engagement, clinging and adherence to views. But this one with right view does not become engaged and cling through that engagement and clinging. Mental standpoint, adhering, underlying intensity. It doesn't take a stand about myself. It doesn't say there is a self. It doesn't say there's nothing. But they have no perplexity or doubt that what arises is only suffering arising. What ceases is only suffering ceasing. His knowledge about this is independent of others. It is in this way, Kachana, there is right view. All exists, Kachana, that is one extreme. All does not exist. This is a second extreme. Without veering toward either of these extremes, the Tathagata, the Buddha, teaches the Dhamma by the middle. And the middle between all exists and nothing exists, is with delusion as a condition, volitional formations come to be. From volitional formations, consciousness, name and form, the six sense spaces, contact, feeling, craving, fuel, existence, birth, old age, suffering and death, and the whole mass of suffering come to be. That is the middle way. Such is the cessation of, the origin of this whole mass of suffering, but the remainless fading away and cessation of delusion comes the remainless cessation and fading away of volitional formations, of consciousness, of name and form, of six sense spaces, of contact, of feeling, of craving, of fuel, of existence, of birth, of old age, suffering and death. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. So this is a middle way between saying there's nothing, which is a materialist idea. Sometimes we say, it's just, we're just really nothing, we're just a brain, and we can observe this universe. At the end, we end with our death. And there's others who say, no, there's a self here which goes on from life to life. So this is actually saying something very profound, saying that you cannot say there's nothing, you cannot say there's a self. Instead you find this middle way called the process, which is neither not existing, it's not nothing, but you can't say it's something stable and persisting. It's this process. And so this process is suffering. So that's why the Buddha says, all you can ever say is just suffering arising, suffering passing away. Which means that when a person asks, well, what happens when an enlightened being, an arahat, dies? You don't actually say that they cease. You say, suffering arose, and now suffering has passed away. It's a beautiful way of looking. It's just a process, that's all. Not a being, but also not nothing. And of course this is important because many people, when they come across Buddhism, they take the idea of non-self. There's nothing. What do you mean there's not self? It's very hard for people to accept just on face value because I can feel, I can know, there's something here. What is it? And so instead of saying it is a self which persists, we say it's just a process with an empty core. We don't say there's nothing. We don't say it persists. We say it's a process. Suffering arising, suffering passing away. Yes, okay, run.
Just to make sure to get it right. So when after parinibbana, right, of an enlightened being, the five khandhas is gone, right?
Yeah, the process has stopped.
But that's clearly gone, right? And there's no more
suffering has ceased.
And no more existence in any subtle way or
exactly, yes.
reappearance.
Of course, all there was suffering, or suffering and impermanent, non-self has stopped.
That part is clear. But
yeah.
In terms of the five khandhas,
five khandhas. That's just the process.
It's all gone.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no more. Cease.
That's right. Yeah. Suffering has ceased. This is all Samyutta Nikaya, all Nidana Samyutta. And this is a very, very famous sutta. It's very beautiful, very powerful, very meaningful. You can read that many times and say, wow, that really is juicy sutta, so much in it. And that's why Nagarjuna saw that. But where was Nagarjuna? 1,000 years after the Buddha or something? And he saw that and he thought, this is essential Buddhism. And it cuts away all the bullshit of all these philosophers. And he sort of put this down, but unfortunately created more bullshit with a whole new sort of type of Mahayana Buddhism, the Majjhimika philosophy. Really a shame, because you see, the whole purpose of that was just trying to cut through all of the too much thinking and philosophizing. And this is the word of the Buddha. This says, all the philosophy of existence. What is. It's such a beautiful sutta.
Is it very dangerous to have a view such as after death is gone, there's no more?
Is it dangerous to have a view that after death it's not gone?
Because I thought that is among all my peers.
Yes,
Immediately outside this hall, almost all people think
it
that.
is because for them it won't be all gone. They'll be very disappointed. When they die, they think, I got that one wrong. When they get reborn again. So the point is here, the only way to stop existence is actually see that there's nothing here. You know that simile, which is one of my best similes, of the driverless bus. When you see the bus driver's seat is empty, you have to see that. You can't believe it. When you experience that, that's a powerful change of what you do in life. You realize there's no one here. So no longer do you try and train your will to be clever and smart, thinking you can avoid suffering by making better choices. You avoid suffering by letting go of choices, not by making better ones.
I start to see that because all my upbringing is to try to make a better one.
Exactly.
Try to be cleverer.
Exactly. Where's it got you? But these are powerful teachings. They're supposed to turn you upside down. So that's why a lot of times people in meditation, they just make more choices and try and be clever to get deep in meditation, instead of just letting all choices vanish. Letting go. Yes, Bronwyn? Yes.
I was just thinking of one of your similes about when we were learning from the Parinibbana, when the Lord Buddha extinguished.
Yeah.
I like that description because I can understand that, the description of no more self-existing. There's a life going out and not existing, so there's no more existence. Is that a good understanding of it, what you're trying to explain?
Indeed, that was one of the best similes of the Buddha, comparing this dependent origination, or this process which we call us, our life, as a flame.
Yes, a flame just
a flame. And a flame has got no core to it. And it was Wachagotu again, when he was, Buddha asked him, when a flame is extinguished, when it ceases, where does the flame go? Does it go to heaven or hell, depending if the flame has been good and brought light to many people, or whether it's burned down a house and it's done bad karma? Where does the flame go? Does it go anywhere? It just stops. So just like the 5 khandhas. They come from causes, just like the flame. In that particular case, with an oil lamp, it comes from the oil, the wick, and the heat. And one of those you take away, the oil is all used up, the wick gets burnt out, or the wind blows the heat away, then the flame is extinguished. It doesn't go anywhere. It wasn't anything to begin with, it's just 3 causes coming together. Just like the causes of delusion, karma formations, they just create consciousness and things of consciousness. So these are causes, with the remainless fading away of delusion and volitional formations and craving. This thing we call the flame of us just is extinguished. It doesn't go anywhere. Yes?
I'm not going to the philosophy
Yeah.
side. I just want to find out whether I understand for myself. When we say one who see the origin of the world as it really would correct not wisdom,
Yeah.
and see this, and the rest of it.
Yeah.
We can actually, to say that we have confirmed faith in the teaching, is actually we can see when you are in jhana, you see the cessation. Eventually, through a lot of practice, you see the cessation of the 5 sense worlds.
Good.
And this is what, for a starter, this is what we are aiming for, and this is what gets us going to
Indeed.
understand what is cessation about. It's not just talking about nothing here, there. It's talking about cessation of the five sense world. If you got it, witness it and experience it, if you have practiced metta, method or whatever for Brahma, you are purely there doing it. You are not gone. The heart is there.
Yeah, indeed. This is where another part of the sutras, the Buddha said many, many times that the cause of seeing things as they truly are, the cause of overturning delusion, seeing things as they truly are, is samadhi, jhana. Samadhi pachaya yata bhutayana dasana. From the stillness of the mind, the supreme stillness of jhanas, that's where you see things as they truly are. So that's where delusion is overcome. And from the cessation of delusion, the cessation of the karma formations and the whole mass of suffering starts to end.
Just finish. This is just for my understanding. The first part is about the world. Of course, we have five sense world.
But what the world means here means the world of old age, suffering and death and birth. This specifically refers to dependent origination.
But then the three, if we go to the three
cravings,
the three kind of states of existence, we have to see them. I mean, we don't.
Yeah, that's extra.
We at least see the five sense world gone.
Yes.
And then we come back. I mean, when we are alive, we come back. We witness it in the mind. The mind is witnessing it. This is where then we say that we are seeing.
That's why you need to witness it, that experience.
And it can be done instead of just talking and going around.
You can't do it by just talking. You need to do Eightfold Path, which includes samadhi. And that is the proximate cause. You can't have that degree of samadhi without all the other factors, such as your precepts and stuff, and mindfulness. But when you get into that samadhi, that stillness, that is the cause for seeing things as they truly are, said the Buddha time and time again. Seeing things as they truly are is the opposite of delusion. So it's very easy to see that from samadhi, based on your sila and all the other factors of the Eightfold Path, you see things as they truly are, and there it leads to cessation. And we can actually, coming on to that, when the next sutta sees the thing called nibbida.
Can I ask one more?
Yes, yeah.
This is, I think it's an English, I really not good in English, but just to make sure I read it correctly. After this world, then this world, for the most part, is shaped by engagement. The end sentence, it is in this way, Kajanga, that is the right view.
Yes.
The way I see it, if you put it at the last sentence on the paragraph, it's not very exact, because to get the right view for this sutta, you need to see the world and to drop the cell of.
That's right.
I think that sentence is crucially should be, by putting it this way, it's not inclusive of seeing the two parts, and that's where a lot of argument come in. You've got to see the two parts to get the right view for this sutta.
Yeah, I see what you mean. But sometimes...
My English is not good, but I can sense
I see what you mean there. That sometimes because a sutta only focuses on one part of the practice, and all the times in all these suttas, things like Eightfold Path are assumed as basic teachings of the Buddha. So you can't just get this right view just by believing or saying that this makes sense. That this is part of gaining a right view, is actually hearing these things. And the other part is actually meditating. The two parts, the causes of right view in the Mahavedala Sutta, the Majjhima, is paratagosa, the words of another. So hearing this, that's part A of getting a right view. And the other one is yoniso manasikara, work of the mind which goes inside to the source, which is the jhanas. So the jhanas and the words of another, the two causes for getting the right view. Here they're just getting the words of another, focusing on that. The actual practice is assumed, but it's not said specifically. So you make a good point there again. It's not just by reading this and believing it. You have to have the practice and experience as well.
This active, respectful,
Yeah.
getting into the ear.
It's important. Essential.
Condition the subsequent self-transformation.
It helps, but it's not enough. So it's important, essential, necessary, but not sufficient. And the other part is the practice. So you listen to things like this, and you practice the meditation, and when those two get together, then you're going to see. I always call this is the map, and the meditation is the flashlight. If you have the map and the flashlight, you can find the hidden treasure. But you have a flashlight with no map, a map with no flashlight, you can't find anything. I'll go to the last sutta now, because it's getting late. A speaker on the Dhamma. At Savatthi, then a certain monk approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said to him, Venerable Sir, it is said a speaker on the Dhamma. A speaker on the Dhamma. In what way, Venerable Sir, is one a speaker of the Dhamma? So this is a test for anybody who sits up here and gives you a Dhamma talk. Now, are they really a speaker of the Dhamma or not? Bhikkhu, if one teaches the Dhamma for the purpose of revulsion towards aging and death, for its fading away and cessation, one is fit to be called a bhikkhu as a speaker of Dhamma. If one is practicing for the purpose of revulsion towards aging and death, for its fading away and cessation, one is fit to be called a bhikkhu who is practicing in accordance with the Dhamma. If through revulsion towards aging and death, for its fading away and cessation, one is liberated by non-clinging, one is fit to be called a monk who has attained Nibbana in this very life. So one is speaking. If they are talking about this, if they're practicing towards this, they are a practicer of Dhamma. If they have reached it, then they're one who's attained Nibbana. If one teaches the Dhamma for the purpose of revulsion towards birth, revulsion towards ignorance, revulsion towards... for the purpose of revulsion towards all these other things, I'm just going to stop at the vijnana, the consciousness. Bhikkhu, if one teaches the Dhamma for the purpose of revulsion towards vijnana, consciousness, for the purpose, then they're called a teacher of the Dhamma. If they're teaching the Dhamma, practicing the Dhamma for the purpose of revulsion towards consciousness, for its fading away and cessation, one is fit to be called one who is practicing the Dhamma. If one has achieved the fading away cessation of consciousness, one can be called a bhikkhu who has attained Nibbana in this very life. If one is practicing for the purpose of revulsion towards delusion, for its fading away and cessation, one is fit to be called a bhikkhu who is a speaker of the Dhamma. If one is practicing for the purpose of revulsion towards delusion, for its fading away and cessation, one is fit to be called a monk who is practicing in accordance with Dhamma. If through revulsion towards delusion, through its fading away and cessation, one is liberated by non-clinging, one is fit to be called a monk who has attained Nibbana in this very life. So with each one of these factors of dependent origination or cessation, if you are teaching for the purpose of revulsion, this nibbida, just had enough of all this. For its fading away and cessation, if you are speaking the Dhamma for that purpose, you are a speaker of the Dhamma. If you are practicing for the purpose of revulsion towards any of these factors of dependent origination, for their fading away and cessation, one is called a monk who is practicing in accordance with the Dhamma. The fading away and cessation of all of these factors, including volitional formations, including consciousness, including the objects of consciousness, for their fading away and cessation, including six sense spaces, including mind, including the contact and all Vedana, good, bad, not just practicing for the good Vedana, but for the fading away of all Vedana, good, bad, pleasure, pain, the whole lot, for the fading away of craving, for fuel, for existence, for birth, old age and death. If one is practicing for the fading away, cessation, one is fit to be called one who is practicing the Dhamma. And if one has practiced so that all these things have faded away and ceased, then you've got Nibbana. Very clear, but it's very wonderful. That's one who teaches the Dhamma for the purpose of these things fading away and ceasing. And sometimes when you start a fading away of old age, sickness and death, yeah, that's good, I'll be okay with that. Fading away is the ceasing of delusion, yeah, that's okay. But some of these middle factors, are you teaching Dhamma for the fading away and cessation and revulsion towards consciousness? Are you teaching the Dhamma for more conscious experience? What are you teaching the Dhamma for? So if it really is for the revolt, and if you're practicing, not to get nice consciousness back in some heaven realm, but you're practicing for the fading away and cessation and revulsion of all consciousness, you're practicing Dhamma. It's powerful teaching. That's why Nidanavagga Samyutta is a very, very deep sutta, one of the best. Indeed, that's why it took me such a long time to get Bhikkhu Bodhi, thanks to the help of monks like Ajahn, to include that as the most accurate translation of that term. Revulsion is exactly the word needed. No. Sometimes, if you look at samsara like a wheel of samsara going round and round and round, you need revulsion to eject you off that wheel. Just letting go, you keep on that wheel. It's like in the old James Bond movies I used to watch. You pressed a button and this guy went through the roof of the car. I always remember that. That's one of the great scenes of James Bond, the ejector seat. And the car always makes me worried when I'm in the passenger seat and tell a bad joke. They might eject me. But that is the ejector seat from samsara, revulsion. It does need a little bit of, it's a bit forceful. And it's exactly what it is. Once you see what you're in, the Buddha actually gave, and the argument I use is, the Buddha said, suppose that you have a wound with pus coming out of it. You wouldn't say let it be. You'd have revulsion to that odour and to that wound, and you'd do something about it. It's a powerful, powerful word, but it's exactly what the Buddha meant. So thank you for pointing that out, because it's a good word. We've got some questions from overseas, and after the overseas questions we'll finish it off, because I have to go back today, and tomorrow I'm off again to Indonesia. Here, good old Mushy P from Thailand. What is the difference between cutting off craving for existence and craving for non-existence? Okay, cutting off, letting go of craving is something which happens again through sort of seeing things as they truly are. It's the same as like seeing the bus driver's seat is empty. That's where craving ends. Trying to get rid of, or craving for non-existence is like trying to throw the bus driver out of the window. Trying to have no sort of existence. So trying to throw the bus driver out of the window is just still deluded. You don't realize that there is no bus driver there. So it's seeing there's nothing there is how you end all craving. Not trying to stop it, because you all see trying to stop existence, trying to stop craving, trying to stop all these things, it's more craving. And you see, not ending craving, that's why Vibhawa, the craving for non-existence, the craving to stop things, is just more craving. It's exactly the same when you're meditating, you have thoughts and you try and stop them. And you get more thoughts. You try and be peaceful, you just cannot do it. Because it's trying, it's effort. So the Buddha was Suwakata, brilliant teachings. When you crave for existence or you crave for non-existence, it's still craving. And it still creates more existence. That's not the way to end samsara. You let go of all craving. All the craving. So you do nothing. When you do nothing, being finishes. That is not there in the teachings of the Buddha. This is Western psychology, but it's valid. To do is to be is to do. The more you do, the more you are. Sankhara paccaya vijnana, if you like. But when these two finish, you stop when you stop doing. And from Romania, Nelu, Ajahn, I cannot understand how is that a human playing with a gun kills or cripples another human being, makes no karma. Is it the victim's bad karma that she is being hurt? I cannot understand this attitude of Buddhism towards the victim. Okay, I mean this is some of the accidents which can happen in this world. The beings, say, know two kids playing together, and they find their father's gun or something, and they just play. And it happens. That's why in most countries all such dangerous weapons have to be put under lock and key. So kids don't play with these things, they're dangerous stuff. But if that has happened, and a child, they never meant, they were just playing, they never meant to sort of do anything to harm their brother or their sister or whatever, and the gun goes off, and there's a tragedy. To be karmic, you have to have the intention that you meant to do that. That was your goal, basically premeditated, even for a second. If it's not premeditated, it is not karmic, powerful. Whether you believe it or not, that's the way that karma works. Obviously, doesn't mean you don't have any sympathy, or compassion for the person who's been injured or even killed. But certainly you don't have any idea of punishing the person who foolishly played around. So obviously, you tried also have strategies so that can never happen again. So you don't say, oh, it's just not karma. No, there's still an obligation to make the place more safe so it doesn't happen again, but you don't punish. In other words, there's no karmic penalty for the person who had no intention. And lastly, from Slovakia, why is Buddhism in general so difficult to understand and internalize? Because it is profound. It's only difficult to understand because it goes against the grain of all you have been taught and believed. We have so many preconceptions which we have grown up within this world. Basically because we've been born in delusion, lived all our life in delusion, it is hard to understand. But there is something about it which has a ring of truth to it. Even if it's hard to understand, this sounds good. And it will continue to be hard to understand unless you start practicing it. If it's just on the level of theory, just like many other philosophies, then it is sometimes hard to internalize. But once you start meditating and do meditation simply, sitting down, letting go, doing nothing, and becoming more and more still, just like I said yesterday afternoon, the still mountain lake with not a wave on the surface, not even a ripple, perfectly reflects the truth of the heaven above it and the world around it. You get a perfect image in a perfectly still lake. One ripple distorts the image. One thought, one movement of the mind, and you don't see a perfect reflection of the Dhamma. So this is why we meditate. We practice stillness. And then Buddhism is so easy to understand. And it internalizes itself. It's only difficult if one doesn't meditate. So there we go. Thank you from Slovakia, Romania and Thailand, and also from here in Perth. So we can now pay respects to the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha, and then we can go off and do whatever we need to do next.